Happy Wednesday, Emily Miller.
In Richmond.
We are ready. We have, as always on Wednesdays, a jam-packed show. First, before we do anything else, I've got a couple of things. Number one, happy birthday to our Drea.
Drea, many happy returns.
She never likes to make a big deal of it, but I want to make a big deal of it and say happy birthday to our hostess with the mostest on the other side of info@beadshop.com. So happy birthday to our Drea. I wanted to say a big hello over to Janice, who is moderating, of course, over on our YouTube channel. And last, but certainly not least, I'm going to cover your lovely face for just a second, Em, and say, don't forget, my friends, you can find us all things live on Wednesdays and Fridays at beadshop.com over on YouTube, as well as our Facebook group, our Facebook page. So go ahead. If you're watching on YouTube, either now or on replay, don't forget to hit that thumbs up, that like, subscribe, and notification button, because as you know, my friends, algorithm is queen. If you have any questions, you can always hit us up at info@beadshop.com. Give us a shout out on Insta if you make anything with our projects or products. We're all over the web at beadshop.com. All right, I've done that. Let's see who's here. Everyone's here.
I know.
Mean, everyone who's anyone.
There's a big list I'm looking at right now on Instagram.
Gosh,
awesome.
So many people are jumping on. I love it. Here in the studio on our end, my friends, of course, we've got Miranda who's filling orders, and we have a special guest. My friend Laura's here from the Fresno Fiber Arts Guild, wrangling our A-dot seed beads into submission. So thank you for Beadshop Home Team as well. My goodness.
And you may be able to hear that Neighborhood Watch is in effect in the other room. I don't know if there's a delivery guy outside. The landscapers have come and gone, so they're not doing it, but
or what's happening.
Apparently something's going on out in the front of the house, and Hope is telling me all about it. So
telling you all about it. And I think Alfred just came in here, didn't he? And has just started to do some meows. So, he's meowing. I think he's meowing at Laura. It's literally pandemonium. Well, Emily, you have outdone yourself today, A, with this project, B, with your mix that you did. We've also added some new stuff to the mix. Oh, and look at this. I want to back up just 1 second and put this up for Miranda. Miranda, Lenny said she got all of her orders yesterday. It was like Christmas. Thanks for all of your hard work. And Sharon just says the mail packaging has been extra sweet. So thank you. We are trying to make things super, as my friend Stephen James would say, soup Q. Because Stephen doesn't have time to say super cute.
How is Stephen? I haven't seen either hair of him for a long time.
You know, he's good. He's still up to his good old shenanigans. Sometimes in the bead world, sometimes out. But all of the new, Janice said here, you can find all of the new stuff in our Just In collection. I'm going to add my camera here.
I'm super excited about this, Kate. I can't wait.
I am super excited as well. I am going to jump in so people can see this. Then I'll put your demo camera up, Em.
Sure.
But these are our new ones. You're going to talk about how you created this confetti mix, which we're going to talk about. Then Delica had a new color release. And we got them, I think we got all of them or most of them. I want to talk to you about those. And then, my friends, we got the bead stringer and the new needles. Janice did mention something, so I want to do a clarification. I knew this, but I wanted to make sure. Now, the confetti mix, this is custom, which you did.
Yeah.
And these are new colors from Miyuki. So these aren't actually in the mix. These are brand new. And Janice said we got every single one of them. Some of them come in mixes, which are these over here. Some of these just came in new colors. I am super wild about, there's like a new gray. No surprise that it's my favorite. Both matte, one opaque, one transparent, which I love. And we got this, they're all gorgeous. You can see here's like a transparent kind of moss green, which I love, which mixes beautifully with this Delica mix. So you can pop on over to our Just In, take a look at all of these. We're going to talk about your confetti mix now, and then you're going to talk about our new bead spinner, which is super exciting. And Dawn, I want to say Dawn took in a neighborhood black cat. Oh. I can't wait to see some pictures.
Nice.
Alfred is very, very proud of you.
Alfred sends his blessings.
He does. He sends his blessings.
Oh.
So I, Emily, am going to highlight your upper camera. Not only do we have your really fantastic project, you have a bonus project. And while you're working on your project, I have another bonus project that I'm going to share with you at the end.
The gifts just keep on coming.
They do. So why don't you take it away and talk about confetti?
Sure.
And we'll get that going.
You know, I have shown you this mix before when we did our last crochet meetup, I think. And I got a wild hair, and I think somebody asked me a question about bead crochet, like, do you ever do it with like really small beads? And I said, well, 15s would be lovely, but would hurt my eyes. But I never really tried Delicas before. And I thought that making a mix would be kind of fun. I don't get to be at Beadshop.com physical Fresno location very often. Although I popped in a couple weeks ago, that was kind of fun.
Wasn't that so fun?
I don't always have access to all the beads. And I got out my Delica beads one day, and I sat down. I thought, I need to make this mix. And sorry about that. Someone's calling.
That's Emily's. Oh, whoops. Sorry. Here, I'll take that out, and then
got rid of it. Hopefully,
you need to add your camera back in, Em.
There you go. So I was happy to get rid of it.
We still have a blank screen. Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Hold, please.
If I have to go back out.
Yeah, I'll put my confetti mix up so people can see it for the moment here. I'll go ahead and do a little dump out here. So you can see it. Yes, just one moment. One moment, please.
Bear with me, please.
It is really fun. It's a fun mix of colors. I just dumped out the whole tube here. Oh, and I want to, while people are chatting about their orders and stuff, I do want to say, folks, when you make your order, there's a place in the bottom for order notes. And now that we're filling back here out of the Bead Shop studio, any order notes that you write to us will be on your invoice. So, like what Lenny's saying here, she says, it's so exciting when it comes. Sometimes I think, why did I get this? Then she goes back and looks over older videos. You can make yourself notes in the note section. And some of you do this. And you could say, for this project, or I got this to make this wrap, or whatever. And you'll see your order notes on your order. So go ahead if you want to remind yourself why you got these things, other than I love these beads so much and I have to add them to my collection. You can put in the order notes what it's for, and you'll see that when you get your order. Just a tip. I've got it here.
Okay.
So let me mute that microphone
Perfect.
and let me do that. And Terry, Drea is not away. So maybe if you sent her an email today, she may not have gotten back to you yet. If not, but you might want to re-email her as well. So let me do a solo layout here. And I'm going to put in Janice's comment. Janice says confetti may just look like a random throw in this and throw in that, but it isn't. Emily and I worked hard to develop a color collection that would color much of the spectrum. So Emily is going to talk a little bit about that. So Em, you're back on.
Okay, sorry about that, guys. I thought since the election was over, I was going to stop getting junk calls, but apparently not.
But nope.
So I pulled out all of my Delicas, and I pulled out colors in a rainbow to start with, and I tried to pick things that had a good mix of opaque, transparent, reflective, matte. So kind of trying to cover most of the spectrum. So my first round with confetti ended up being 27 colors, and I laughingly sent it to Janice, and I said, "Do you think we can do this? It's 27 colors." And she said, "Are you incredibly insane?" No.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
So I went back to the drawing board a little bit. One of the things I did do, which I had not done in the past, but I pulled the Delica mix, the green Delica mix, and I used that because it had 4 or 5 colors in it, I think. So that was one color. So I got my mix down to 12. And I actually, it's kind of fun mixing beads. It's a little bit scary because really in seed bead land, we've been always taught to keep everything separate, in little dishes and containers and however you do it, separate, separate, separate. And mixing them together is sometimes seen as a fail. So I mixed, but I mixed very small quantities. And there's a couple ways you can do this for yourself. If you have a bunch of beads you think that would look really great as a mix, but you're not really sure, start small. And I always take notes. So I use like a Post-it note or something, but start with a white dish. Sorry, this one's got some smudge in there. Oh God, a couple of smudges. Anyway, start with a white dish, a cleanish white dish. And one thing that can make your life really easy is to grab the lid of a tube. Okay. And so this can be a really good measuring device. I think when I did mine, I used like a mini vintage spoon. Kate and we bond over mini spoons, but you can get a little souvenir spoon if you've gotten one, or a little salt spoon or whatever you got that's small.
I've got my mini spoons right here.
But something that gives you a measuring amount. So when you start to make a mix for yourself, start really small. And, there's even a line on the edge of this little cap. And so you can start with like a measurement of that many of one color. And then you do the same amount of each one. And I think evenly is kind of the way to go. There might be times when you say, oh, this just needs a little bit of sparkle. I'm going to throw some silver line, something in there. And that would be fine too. But I think having kind of make some notes and do this with a little bit of purpose, it lets you recreate it another time if you happen to run out. And I know that Beadshop takes good notes with theirs. And find any little thing that you can use for measuring. We have the little cap already on the tube. So you've got that kind of in your hand. The caps can be different. So I would use one particular cap for the whole thing. But it is a great way to kind of give yourself a little bit of measurement. So
that's a great tip with the cap, Emily. I actually have never done it that way. And the cap really controls it. Excellent, excellent advice.
Well, if you want to recreate it and you're not doing a full tube or a full measurement of something, I think it makes sense to take some notes and kind of slowly. Also, if you are making something and it kind of ends up being kind of brown because every color in the same values, then you may want to separate it. And so if you've only done a very small amount, that separating doesn't take very long.
Right.
Or you end up putting it in a little tube and saying, this is not a great mix, but here it is. There's a little amount and you haven't really mixed too many beads. But when you're mixing your beads, I think moving around in the values and moving around in the finishes and the transparencies really helps a lot. I have met many artists over the years who work in paint or printmaking or even in photography. And when you mix every color of the rainbow in paint together, you get brown or gray or darkish brownish gray. It's not usually the color you're after. So we're lucky with beads that the colors do retain some of their individuality. And so you can see each one different by itself. But you can kind of get to that point where the colors don't really do for you. And, you may want to stop and move on to a new thing. But if you've taken some notes and you've made some measurements, then that's easy to not do the same thing again. So we got our mix down to 12 colors, including that mix that had 4 or 5 in it. So that was a great boost, having that green mix. So I think it's fun to mix beads, and I think you should try it. I think it's an entertaining way to kind of play around with your beads and see what you might get out of it. I would always use my mixes for bead crochet, and I've done lots of options in bead crochet over the years with mixes. And I even did Esplanade, which I don't know if you've seen this on the internet, but on the Esplanade page, we put up a photo of this one, which is made from the newest mix that Janice did. That is just really gorgeous Southwestern colors.
I just love that bangle so much.
Yeah, it's so pretty. But pulling mixes into bead crochet to me is like, it's sort of a natural for that. Mixes that you buy that come already mixed you might like. These are actually 2 different mixes. So one's lighter, one's darker. It's kind of fun to play around with these. And if I wanted to sort these out, I could actually pull the colors out of the mix and figure out which is which and what the contents are. And they actually turn out to be usually pretty much even amounts of every color. So, Confetti is really bright, happy flower colors, garden colors. I loved all of these colors. I love them all individually, and I love putting them all together. To me, it's a natural for bead crochet. It's like the perfect use of a mix. But I realize that not everybody's doing bead crochet. And I don't do a ton of laddering, but I love working really fine with laddering. I think this is one of those places where my sense of order, and everybody has their own kind of way of doing things. My sense of order really falls in because it begins to look like looming. It just happens to have a warp that's leather on the outside. So I use the 0.5 millimeter black leather. Started with a button, and I can't remember. These guys are called curved oval.
Yeah, I love that. Just that simple little button. It's perfect.
Yeah. And so this I thought made just the cutest little easy, sweet loomed bracelet. It's just a little bit longer than the width of the tray, so I had to sort of reposition like once. And I did looming on the tray, or this on the tray like Kate likes to do. And I just think it's really pretty. It's a super simple little add to the stack pile bracelet, but I mean, even together they look great, right?
Yeah, so I love it. And
I also had to talk Janice and Kate into getting a bead spinner for us to have available.
Woohoo!
If you do kumihimo, or if you do bead crochet, if you do even elastic bracelets with lots of beads, and you want to get beads on your fiber fast, the bead spinner is no joke. This is the tool for you. It's great with mixes. It is a little less effective with mixed sizes. So if you're going to mix sizes, and you may have to add that extra large bead or those random shaped ones in kind of as you go along yourself. But I loved these nice, good quality, heavy wooden bead spinners. So the base is nice and wide and sturdy. The bowl is nicely finished on the inside. So my original one is very similar looking, but I'll show you some of the differences. This is my old original one from the Bead Spinner Lady.
Oh, yeah.
The base is not as big, so it's a little tippier. This one's a little more stable. The spindle part in the middle that makes you turn is all one size all the way to the ends. So this is an advantage having this little knob on here. It does give you something to grip that you don't have to grip quite as hard. I know Kate and I have talked just recently, or Kate talked just recently about carpal tunnel and repetitive stress injuries to your hands. Jewelry making, it's one of those places where we do a lot of pinch gripping and holding things really tightly and we're doing repetitive motions. Anything you can do for your hands that you can stop yourself from doing those repetitive motions and that hard pinching, fingertip pinching, it will help that carpal tunnel area last as long as possible. And be as comfortable as possible. So any kind of little added on knobs or better grips on crochet hooks, anything like that is really a benefit. Wider grips on tools, anything you can do to help yourself, I think is really to the good. And I would recommend it from the start if you're just getting started with this. But Bead Spinner is amazing, an amazing tool, and it has such good uses for getting lots of beads on your string material at once.
So Emily, can I break in here for just a second?
Of course.
I'm gonna break in just for, I'm gonna do an emergency. Remember how it used to be? I'm gonna do an emergency phone break-in.
Should I put my hand to my ear?
Right. So I'm gonna tell you, I have a confession. I have never used a bead spinner. Never. I've had one hanging around, whatever. I'm like, no bead spinner. So as you were talking, it was my first foray into bead spinning.
What did you think?
I am a giant convert.
I remember the first weekend I got mine, I hurt my shoulder because all I wanted to do was spin beads.
No, I'm telling you, I'm not going to steal your bead spinner thunder. I'm going to go back to you, but let me tell you. First, look at Miranda. See, it does like this little centrifugal look at. Oh. I know. So I'm going back to you, sister, but well, I couldn't lie.
I have another sample to kind of flaunt around in front of you. This is Kumihimo. So this is the same kind of stitches that Michelle does, and she works on a foam disc, and I work on a Marodai, which is a wooden braiding stand that allows you to work really with the work at kind of lap height. If you're sitting in a sort of average chair, it's right between your knees, and sort of you're sort of working sitting upright. You're not leaning over it. And these are braided strands. So Michelle will braid her strand, and she braids the fiber and kind of puts a bead in, and then braids again, and then a bead and a braid. And these are actually where I braided just using the strands themselves. So this is 8 strands of beads.
Wow.
And they start, gosh, I haven't done it in a while. So I want to say they probably start about 40 inches long. So I would do about 40 inches or so for crochet, maybe 50 inches. So to make a bangle. So I had to make 8 of those. And then I braided them, which takes about 20 minutes. There's all this time to set up, right? And then it takes no time to make the braid itself. This is a square braid. There's flat braids, square braids, round braids. I think I gave your mom a flat braid. She's got
one. Yeah, you did.
And I love Kumihimo. It's a really amazing thing to do. But without the bead spinner, this took an eternity.
Yeah.
To make these strands. It's doable. It's not impossible. And I've done it. But with the bead spinner, life is so much better. So anytime you have to do any kind of lengths of beads, and we could do a necklace, multi-strand necklace with 8 or 10 strands of beads and put the beads on in no time to make it, really.
No, it is really crazy, Emily, because I was starting to do my little secret project and I was starting to string my beads on here, my Delicas. And I'm like, what fresh hell is this? And then I'm like, wait a minute. We just launched a flippin' bead spinner. I'm going to see if I can use it. And I can. I'm using the needles that came with it, but you had us get some other needles as well. So do you want
Sure.
to talk about the needles and stuff?
Yes.
And then I know you're going to show how to use it.
Yes.
But
there are a few different choices that you can use for needles, and the needle is going to depend a little bit on what beads you're using, right? Which is not so different than what we've used before. There are short and long curved needles, both of these options. The shorter needles are a little bit small, a little bit finer, and these are the ones that will come with your bead spinner. The longer needles also you can purchase. They give you a little bit more to kind of grab hold of. And the curve is just a little bit smaller, which doesn't really make any difference at all. But to use the bead spinner really effectively, the curved needle is best. You can use a straight needle, and I have done it, but it's not as fast and speedy. When we start looking at the eye of the needle, this might come into play where you say, wow, I have some limitations. The eye of this needle is pretty small, right? And it's right. You're right. It is pretty small. And the beads that I might be wanting to put on it are kind of small. So one of the advantages to Delica beads and Japanese beads in general is they have a really large hole in proportion to the bead on the outside. So let me just do a quick little sketchy for you. Delica beads are a little bit more like you cut a piece of pipe. Sorry, I started with the wrong shape. JP will be laughing at me, right? Delica beads are a little bit more like you cut a slice from a pipe. They're not quite square, but they have a big hole. If we look at it from the side, the end on, the hole is almost as big as the bead, right? The wall is really thin. So that big hole is a trademark of Japanese beads in general. Delicas, any of the Japanese rocales, the round beads, any of those beads all have big holes. Check beads are a little bit more like a donut, right? They have thicker walls, smaller hole in the middle, and they're more rounded. If we look at it from a side view, there's the hole, there's the hole. They're more rounded like a donut, right? So it's a different shape. Delica beads, more like a square. Their hole is here and here. And check beads, a little bit more like that donut shape, right? With the hole here. I'm not a really great illustrator, so you guys have to bear with me. So either one of these will work with a curved needle. If you're planning on doing 15s, bless you for doing 15s in crochet, the shorter needle that comes with your bead spinner should work in a check 15 or a Japanese 15. But when you start looking at check 15s and check Charlottes, things like that, getting down into those 13s and those 12 smaller beads, you probably won't be able to use the bead spinner. You're going to have to do it without. And the problem will be getting them over and around that curve in the beading needle. Okay.
And these are Delica 11s that we are using in the mix today, right?
Yeah. And, Delicas, a lot of times people don't really show them as a size because they really come the one size, or they used to only come the one size. Now there is a 15, and there is, of course, an 8 Delica.
Yeah, so, one of my favorites.
If you look at an 8 Delica, you can see really clearly that the wall of the bead is very thin and doesn't really impact the structural nature of the bead at all, but it just gives you that bigger hole to work with. So more passes through the bead, bigger choices, wider choices of stringing materials. These seed beads are what are considered a drawn glass bead. If you've ever seen a Play-Doh machine that extrudes Play-Doh, or a pasta machine that's making tubular pasta, so that extrusion process is that drawing out of the material. So these glass beads are made by having a lump of glass that has a bubble in the middle. And as they draw the glass out, that bubble grows with the glass, but it actually the whole thing gets smaller, right? It pulls down. So these beads now extruded, still sort of drawn because it's pulled apart. These beads are extruded and cut with that very, very small hole. So the glass is made hot, so in that sort of semi-liquid state, and then cut into little pieces. Same way our Czech glass beads, these are Czech, I think these are mostly Czech. These are all Czech. These Czech glass beads all made the same way. The finishing on these is a little bit different. The Czech gets tumbled and sanded a little bit more so the edges are more rounded. The Japanese just get finished, sanded off so they're not so sharp on the edges. But all of those things, knowing those things about seed beads will make working with the bead spinner a lot easier and a lot more predictable.
I'm telling you, this bead spinner,
we changed your life.
Yeah, it pretty much is. I'll tell you.
You know, if you were going to make a bunch of elastic bracelets, you could string up onto elastic miles of beads, like in no time. And you'd end up with having to tie the bracelets, basically cut them and tie them, right? So if I'm working on bead crochet, I always work towards the spool, right? In other words, I don't cut my thread from my spool. And I really, when I'm doing the beads for Kumihimo, I also don't cut my thread from my spool. I have a long thread in there so that I can make adjustments if I have to. But while I'm getting the beads on the thread, I leave it attached to the spool. For crocheting with Delicas, I'm going to go with the micro Ceylon. And this has changed how I have crocheted in the past. So I have crocheted in the past using all different kinds of fiber for this middle. And I don't know why I avoided Ceylon for so long. It is a really great thread and it is inexpensive, but I really liked using Gouda Broad heavy duty thread for sewing thread.
Yeah, like a stitching thread. Yeah.
And it does give you kind of a nice drape of your finished piece. It's a little bit more flexible, but man, when I'm working with Ceylon, I got some tension here.
Yeah, I like crocheting with the Ceylon a lot. I think it's, I've been working on my crochet for sure. So there's a couple of questions about the bead spinner, Emily, that I'm going to go back to, if that's okay.
Yeah, I had to restart my iPad, so I'm way behind you.
Yeah, no. So number one, Debbie has a question about that braid that you did. Do you start from the outside and braid in?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the disc that Michelle uses, right, is very similar to, it's the same as the top of the Maridai. And if you go online and look around for Kumihimo supplies, you'll find Maridais in different heights. And usually the top of the Maridai is, it's about 8 inches, 7.5 to 8 or so, or 9 inches. It's round with a hole in the center. And so the braids happen the same way Michelle was doing, with one difference. The braid itself, the bead strands and the braid are counterbalanced with weights. And you braid using 2 strands each move instead of just 1 strand. So Michelle works around her disc because she's holding onto the disc with the other hand. So you use 2 strands in your braids. And I vaguely remember some of the movements, but I'd have to go back and do some. And the braid goes down the middle, just like Michelle's does, of the disc, but down the middle of the Maridai. Okay. And Maridais they're not cheap. A wooden Maridai is probably going to set you back in the $150 kind of range.
Yeah, a couple hundred, I think they are.
And then you're going to need weighted bobbins, which comes in sets of 8 or sets of 4. Because you can do, Kumihimo can be anything 8 to like 32 strands for the traditional Japanese braiding with cords. It was meant as the braids that tied on the samurai armor and used in many, many garment areas. If you look at a traditional Japanese kimono with a wide obi sash, sometimes there's another cord tied around the outside of that sash. That's usually Kumihimo.
Kumi, yeah.
Super useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And super satisfying to do. There's a couple of other questions about the spinner itself. Terry's asking, can you string onto wire using the spinner?
Yes. Yeah. Be no reason why not. So you're going to bend the end into a curve.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
A couple more things.
She said doing the 15s on Kumi was no picnic. Oh, Michelle, you brave lady.
Yeah. So Michelle has said she's made a Kumi necklace using 15-aughts, similar to one that you did. She did use the bead stringer for the stringing. And then she has a Mara die that she can use the foam disc on as well.
Right,
so
you just plop it on top, so it helps you track. Yeah, no, absolutely. It wouldn't braiding on the Mara die takes a little bit of meditational focus, and I actually, and when I have taught it in in-person classes, I asked everyone to sit with their back to their neighbor, so to sort of sit sideways at the table, because they'd be working right in front of themselves. And then I would ask them not to talk in loud voices. Distracting. And if your neighbor's trying to get through something, they need that focus time. And really, once you got into the braiding, it went pretty quickly. And then, so the braiding, all this preparation time that might have taken hours to prepare, was done in about half an hour.
Yeah.
Very fast.
It's crazy. Another quick question. So Emily, on this bead spinner, how large of a seed bead can you use? Like a 6-aught?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It doesn't matter.
No. Again, mixing sizes may give you, because we're going to use centrifugal force or centrifugal function here, using mixes of sizes may not give you a mix as you see in the tube, right?
Because some are heavier, some are lighter.
Correct. Right. And so if you were mixing like shapes, or if you were mixing like, I don't know if you'd mix a 15 and a 6 together, but the 15s are gonna get sunk to the bottom, right? The 8s or the 6s are it's not gonna be the kind of mix that you think it's gonna be, I don't believe. But you can always stop and put on a few of the sizes that are getting kind of skipped. So
will you show us how to spin?
Sure. So let me talk one more thing about needles.
Oh, sure.
One more little detail about needles, and then we'll get.
And Janice was asking about the larger and the small. Essentially, the smaller one has a big eye. The longer one is longer. There's just some trial and error, right?
Yeah, and I like the bigger one only because it's a little more to grab a hold of, and I feel more comfortable with it. But whatever you've got will work just totally fine. So with thread, let's just say that you would like to go onto a thread that will not fit through the eye of the needle. So how do you do that? How would you get elastic through the eye of this needle? You don't.
You don't. You make a little leader, right, Em?
Yeah, I call this a harness. And basically I used a piece of beading thread. What kind of beading thread? Nymo or whatever is in your bin that you have at your hand. KO thread, whatever. And I leave it on the needle. It's kind of permanently there.
Oh, that's really smart.
Is I cut a piece that's maybe a foot long or so, and I feed it both directions through the eye of the needle. Okay? And this gives me a little loop to put my bigger thread through. Here we go. So I'm just going to feed it through like it's an eye. So that could be elastic. That could be whatever other thread won't fit through the eye of the needle.
Right. So smart.
You pull this down till there's just a little bit of space here. And I like to have that little bit of transition because my beads are going to go over the eye of the needle onto this quadruple thread, 4 layers of thread, and then over that and onto the new thread, right? I'm just going to pull you over here, so when you put beads in the bead spinner, this one tube is probably about the minimum that I would start with. You can do it with less, it's going to get a little, it'll take a little more moment or two more time to do it with less, right? So I'm just going to take my needle, and I think of this as the face of a clock. 12 o'clock, 6 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock. I'm going to put my curved needle into the river of beads at about 7 or 8 o'clock, 7:30 or 8 o'clock. Okay, this would be 9, this would be 6, so in the middle there. Right?
So about my bedtime, about 7:30.
7:30 since the time changed is my bedtime, actually.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that.
Yeah.
Don't call.
That's a dose of realness, dose of realness right there.
Literally on Sunday night, when the time changed, I was sitting on my couch and I thought, it's got to be like midnight. And I looked at the time, it was 7:40, and I said, I'm going to, I'm exhausted.
I'm like, what fresh hell is this? Yeah. Same.
I'm exhausted. I can't take anymore. And
I'm just going to go to bed. Yeah, same.
All right. So
put the needle in at Kate's bedtime. Then what happens?
And we can spin this either way, but only one way will load beads on the needle. Okay. So I'm going to spin clockwise at this point. Clock goes around to the right, and I'm going to dip the needle into the river of beads. And as I spin, I adjust where that little hook of that needle goes in. And you will feel when the needle is, if you push your needle in so far that it's rubbing on the bottom,
right,
no beads will go on. Okay, let's have a little moment with that. So I need my tip of my needle to be in the river that's going by, right? And I just need to adjust, and you'll find there's a little sweet spot. And then the beads just kind of climb right up the needle. Blah, blah, blah,
yeah,
blah.
No, Emily, I'm going to put us all on. I'm going to show you. So here's me
and here
under
go your
me.
beads.
Look, so I've been stringing while you've been talking. This is all that's left of the whole tube. And I'm not kidding. You guys, I've been in the bead business since 1992. And I think I was given a bead spinner from the bead spinner lady like a billion years ago. And sometimes I get in my brain that I'm like, no, I'm not going to try that. And yeah, look at all of this stringing that I've done. It's a game changer, Emily.
It is. And I like to get, I get like 4 inches of beads on this needle, and then I turn it and put it on. And you may have noticed there was a couple of beads that went rogue and escaped out.
They escaped out. Yeah.
I keep it on a bead mat so that they kind of don't go very far, and just collect them up on here. I see, Jamie, you're asking a bead spinner and elastic cord and Delicas. So your elastic cord that you're going to have to use with Delica is going to be really small, whatever you're using. And I have said this before, and I'm very honest about my feelings about elastic. It's a struggle to work with elastic,
Yeah, elastic is a struggle bus.
It really is. Its big advantage is that it fits everyone and that it's super easy to put on. So, my mom had some mobility issues towards the end of her life, and she loved an elastic bracelet, and I would make her elastic bracelets, and every now and then I would visit her, and she would have a little baggie of beads that someone would help pick up off the ground. And it's like, you know what, if you can just let them go when they break and keep walking with your life and not worry about them, then I think it's great. I would use the smallest elastic I could get away with. I would still use the harness, and I would slip the elastic through the harness.
That harness tip, that's worth the price of admission right here.
I don't remember who showed it to me, but it works really well. So shockingly well.
Shocker.
Shocker. So really you can put any size thread that your bead will fit on doubled, will go through that harness, and then you just transfer one to the other.
Now,
makes your life so golden.
Emily, have you ever used, Linda is asking, we don't carry the plastic inserts for these. Do you know what the plastic, because I'm admitting ignorance. I have no, I mean, this is
So
my first literal go round.
when I begged Janice for these bead spinners, I said, listen, they're such a good thing. We should have them. They're not as widely available as they used to be. I mean, they went through a phase like many things do.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, which one do you want? And I said, well, show me what the options are. And she did that. And then like a couple days later, this huge box arrived at my house. And in it was every kind of bead spinner to try out. And I actually made a little chart about what I thought about all the bead spinners.
I love it.
So my only,
like the Consumer Reports for bead spinners.
Do you know I belong to Consumer Reports?
Same. Hashtag same.
Hashtag old person.
Yeah. Well.
Let me do a little research about that air fryer.
Yeah.
So I don't care what kind of bowl you have, as long as it really works well for you. The plastic ones that I tried out, the bowl part didn't spin quite as freely and nicely as the wooden ones did. I do also feel like I kind of like the loveliness of this wooden feel of this and the sound of it, and all those things kind of hit me in the right spot. So if the bead bowls will come out and makes it easier for you, then that's fine. I don't usually have so many going that I have to worry about having to change out the bowls. If you were working with different sizes and you had like 3 or 4 going, I don't know. Maybe it would be.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I even tried the electric one. Yes, Melanie, I'm right there with you. It's the next thing out of my head. The electric one, it had its moments. It was a little bit loud, and I'm not
Bead Spinner 2, Electric Boogaloo. That's what's going on. Sorry.
I didn't really love the noise of the electric one, the motor.
Yeah.
But it did click right along. In the past, and we've talked about this before, if you guys have seen French beaded flowers, you know what those are?
Yes.
Right?
Beauty. Yeah.
So that's a place where the electric one might be really fun. So this is how I know that it will work onto wire. French beaded flowers are flowers made with wire inside the beads to shape and make them into representations of natural flowers, of real live flowers, but they don't quite exactly, they mimic a live flower. They're not really an exact replica. And they were meant to be in millinery, so on hats, or used in places where you'd want flowers to be everlasting, and like outside in cemeteries. They're great for those kind of things. But French beaded flowers are really fun to make, and that's another place I use my bead spinner. So I take up my wire that I'm going to be working onto, that I need to load thousands of beads onto, and I curve the end and I dip it into the beads. So I know that your bead spinner will work onto wire just fine. So the curved needles are kind of where it's at. Now there is a curved needle with a big eye also that you can put larger threads into, but there is a point where even that big eye won't work as well, and you'll want to use a harness. But it's a lot easier to thread. So if you have trouble threading needles, sometimes that big eye needle will save you. JP, I think I gave Kate back both the packs of needles, so she has them at her own.
Yeah, I have them. I'll show them to you, and because I was playing around with both of them, so hang tight for the needle review.
Yeah, and needles are kind of a consumable for me. You can break them. Where these needles are curved, they tend to get a little bit brittle from the bending part of it. When I was doing a lot of kumihimo, I would bend my own needles. I know that sounds crazy, but I was kumihimoing with Charlotte's, and I wanted to be able to use the bead spinner. And so I had to get a very fine needle that was long and straight, and then I heated it with a torch and bent it into a curve. And that was
necessity is the mother of invention.
It was not always as successful. I wanted to use twisted wire needles, the collapsible eye style, but they're not stiff enough.
Right.
So yes, necessity is absolutely the mother of invention, Kate. And I also forward that with, I have the power and the technology to fix this myself. So
That's correct.
right.
I love it. So so I'm going to put us all back on the thing right here, because I know you are going to talk about the actual crocheting part in just a second.
Sure.
But what I did was, just so you all can see this, in the time that Emily has been teaching us, I have strung up, you can see there's the beads left in my bead spinner. Let me get I'm going to measure this so you know how long this is. I have strung up, let me measuring. I have strung up about 100 inches of beads. And that's just about everything in the confetti tube, with the exception of what's going on here. I will tell you, yeah, that's 4. So it was 25 inches, a little more than 100 inches. And I will tell you what, that's all I want to do. I mean, I know I've got to fill orders. I know we've got to do stuff, but look at this. Look at how, look, you guys, come the fork on. Look at how cute look at this. I'm telling you, I am so into it, and I'm so into the wood of this bowl.
I know. Isn't that lovely? It's just charming.
Where has this been all my beading? I'm almost crying here. I love it so much.
You know, I think what's really fun about beading and all the tools that we use is that everyone's going to discover things at a different time, but there are some things that have really stood the test of time. I mean, I'm trying to think back when I bought my first bead spinner, and 2010.
Yeah, I think I got one
Maybe?
like when I was doing a lot of teaching at the shows or something, and someone like gave it to me, and I'm all, whatever. I'm a metalsmith. I don't really do a lot of
I know.
And
so when I empty my bowl, and I just that spindle is a little greasy. I should not have grabbed that with my hand. When I'm done with the bead spinner, I just empty my bowl by turning it upside down on a padded surface, right? And then I use a triangle to.
I'm going to highlight that again, because you're going to talk to us now about in a few the actual
Yep. Got it. Yeah, this is the other tool, like this triangle.
Yeah. Where have you been my whole life? Triangles. We love them so much.
I love them so much. I have a stack right here at my table. I put my initials on them because if I go somewhere, someone borrows it, I want mine back.
Yeah, the triangles are the best, and we carry them in packages of 12. And yeah, I have them. Like Miranda's always asking me, "Give me that triangle. Give me that triangle."
Yesterday, it was a sunny day. I was beading on the patio with my newest project that's coming in a little while. I'll wait till you guys see it.
That sounds delightful.
I had a little mini tray with 2 triangles and the beads I was working with. And this is what I carried down from my studio to sit in the patio in the sun.
Oh.
Right? And I could not live without these.
Yeah, same.
I might actually have to order a dozen just because.
I know, because they're so good.
I'm afraid I'm going to lose them all. How will I lose all of those and not have any? I don't know, but I'm afraid that might happen.
Yeah, well, they go where the socks and the hair ties go.
Yes, I know. I have a mismatched pair of socks right now that I'm angry about. Every time I do the laundry, I'm angry about it.
Yeah, and you always have really nice socks, so it's not.
These are just athletic socks. But I got 2 different sets of white ones, and now I have a mismatched pair. So I've lost one of each, and I don't know where they went, and it's a little frustrating.
So, talk to us about crochet, Em.
So, bead crochet with Delicas is the same as bead crochet with anything else. And you know what, Kate? I should have gotten something else out of my works stuff.
Do you need to get it?
I need to get it. Can you hang on?
Okay.
Can you?
Yeah. I'm going back to this.
2 seconds.
So let me show you folks. So here's the dregs that are in my, that are left in my spinner. And Emily is right about getting the bead spinner, getting that needle. I'm covering it. You can't see it with my hand there. But those last few little beads, you just kind of have to find that sweet spot there. It's pretty satisfying. So this, like I said, was the whole tube of the confetti mix, and so it gives me a little over 100 inches. I'm also a little sneak peek for what I'm going to do next with this. I have been spinning these onto wire, and it's a 34 gauge black wire that we use with needle to make needles out of. So my mystery project so far, one whole tube of the confetti mix spun onto that wire, because this, I think, will be a great alternative to what Emily's doing with crocheting, though I am perfecting my crocheting technique, I'll tell you. Emily, let me know when you're ready to come back on board.
I'm ready for you.
Okay, I'm moving back. And now, Emily, back to you.
I let this out the last time we did bead crochet, and I forgot to do it, and I just kind of flashed on it. When I taught in-person crochet classes, I found that the hardest thing for people was to getting things to start. And so, enabler that I am, I want everybody to be as obsessed about this as I am. I actually made starts for all my students.
And you are crazy.
I had another kind of junior teacher who was learning how to be a teacher at Baubles and Beads, and she was left-handed, so I had her make the left-handed starts.
Oh, nice.
So we had these for students, and you've seen me use the plastic drink straw before. So this I used to give a student would be a few rows of bead crochet, which in what I would call a stump. So it's this little piece, right? And this was actually strung on crochet cotton, which was my first fiber of choice. I love all the colors that crochet cotton comes in, and I'm a sucker for anything like that. So this was just my early days of bead crochet, and I would crochet them a few rows, and I would give them, I don't know, I think I gave them like a foot of beads, a foot of size 8 beads on a contrasting thread on a little thread card. And this would be something that they could then practice with until they were ready to use their own beads. And they could save this and continue to use it with other beads. And so I would encourage you, if you're struggling with bead crochet, don't start with the Delicas. Start with something else. When you're learning a size 8 bead on a forgiving fiber like the large Ceylon or cotton, the large Ceylon is a little bit wiry, which may give you some fit. So crochet cotton or whatever you have at home that's a little bit bigger. I know you guys are all fiber people. You all know. And you've all got stuff. So I'm going to show you what I would do to transition and how I would handle that transition using a stump. So you can use a stump and never have to start bead crochet again from scratch.
Oh.
Right? So if you make yourself a little stump like this, and I always did them on the little drink straw, because I found like the first row kind of collapses. And I use drink straws, and I also use toothpicks, these round toothpicks. I break the end off, and I use that to start my Delicas around, because it's tiny in there, right? The hole is little. So I just use something very small. It could be a smaller toothpick or knitting needle or whatever you got. So let's just say that I'm gonna get my Delicas started on this little stump. I'm gonna grab some scissors. I'm gonna cut the thread off. So now my working thread is loose, and I'm going to attach my new thread to that stump. Now here's a place where you don't want to lose that loop, because then your beads are going to start falling off, right? So I'm going to put a safety pin in that loop, and then I can pull this loop down, right? And I'm going to attach my new beading thread to that. Does that make sense, you guys?
Yeah, so it's like you always have, it's like your sourdough starter.
Exactly.
But for your bead crochet.
Exactly. So I have my overhand knot here with the 2 strands, and I'm just going to use my awl to kind of
Give it your all, give it your all.
giving it my
Sorry.
all.
Sorry.
Get that all tight, get that knot
Apologies.
tightened down. And I really want that knot to be pretty small, because I'm going to put it on the inside of my beading. And this is a place where, this is how I would change colors. You know, if I'm changing colors, I
Right.
will just, if I haven't pre-strung everything, I can just change by knotting a new color on. Easy, right? So at this point, I have my new thread attached, and here's my loop that's in my safety pin, right? I'm going to take my safety pin out of that loop very carefully, and I'm going to put my hook in that loop.
Oh, smart.
Right? So now I've got my loop going, new thread attached to my old thread, and I have all of my seed beads ready to go. Now, at this point, it might be easier to take the stump off the straw, and it's really a personal choice. You can do whatever makes you comfortable. Okay? But I would leave my straw or support in there until I have a few rounds. This is actually, I realize that I'm doing it left-handed. I'm on a left-handed stump. Oh well. So the same now applies. I'm going to crochet by putting my needle under the bead, flipping it, pulling a bead down. And I can do this with any transition of size that I want to, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I can, or transition of beads. I can go ahead and crochet, having to go around left-handed direction. I'm a little off here. That's right. And I'm just crocheting with the Delica. And for now, you'll see 2 different types of thread on my hook, because I'm working under my old thread.
And Emily, we have a really good, and we're not going to belabor it here
Right.
too much, because we have several really fantastic bead crochet shows, as well as a handout that Emily has done.
And you know, I don't think I've ever showed this transition like this before.
No, I don't think you have. That's really helpful.
It can be kind of a game changer if you're struggling to get started every time, and that's something that slows your enthusiasm down for bead crochet. Then don't start the same every time. Yeah, I'm going around the wrong direction. That's okay. Working like a lefty here.
That's right. But you
so what I would do now with this new attachment is I would continue. Yeah, this is not working because I'm going the wrong direction. I would go ahead and continue beading until I have another 1/2 inch or so of stump. And then I would cut it. And I would cut it, leaving the Delicas, some Delicas attached to that old stump. And then I would continue on. And now I'm only in Delicas. Okay. So having that transition sometimes will make you feel much more comfortable. And you can save that stump. And you just clean it up, pull off a few loose beads, get yourself some thread, tie it on, and go again. It's a little bit like changing thread in knitting or crochet. At some stage, you have a little change that you have to make, and it's not that big a deal. But having that stump and being able to just kind of transition and keep going is a really nice option. Otherwise, I have to start fresh every time. And I know for myself, not every technique that I learn do I get it right the first time I try it. And with metalsmithing, we all melt some jump rings, and we all melt some bezel cups. We make some poor design choices, sometimes making it harder on ourselves in metalsmithing. In learning how to do PMC, we melt some stuff by accident. We create things that are too small or too delicate to really survive firing and finishing. It happens to everybody. So it took me, I think, 3 really concerted efforts to learn bead crochet. And I started with a book. I took a class, and then I discovered my favorite book of bead crochet that gave me the flip in bead crochet, which made all the difference in my life. And I've talked about that in other bead crochets that we've done. So you can go back and look at the early ones, the very earliest ones we did, where we made a long necklace with trade beads. Really good one for all that technique.
Yeah, for that technique.
Yep.
Now, Emily, around how many
Diameter?
beads? Yeah, is the diameter.
I almost always do 6.
Okay. So this is a 6 bead. Even with the Delicas, it's 6.
Yep. I find with 5, you begin to see too much thread.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I did 8 at one point, and it just made it so big around that it kind of collapses in the middle.
Yeah, it's a little floppy. Yeah.
So there is literally a tube down the middle of this. So you have a tube of thread going down through the center. And you could string it on like a bead by putting it on something like Softflex if you wanted. But you can also just crochet in a line to make a cord if you want to. That's another way of using crochet. We've done that as well. I think we did a little bits and pieces crochet.
Yeah, that was a great one.
A bunch of different materials, but that's a great place to play around with the bead spinner as well. You can see what kind of a mix you get, or you can spin on a few inches and crochet those and then spin on something new.
Yeah, that's terrific.
Good fun, Kate.
It looks great. So, what I want to do is I'm going to add I'm going to share my screen here just real quick because I want to show everybody where to find. Bear with me here just a second. Let me do this. I'm going to share this screen. Okay. So what we've got here is we've got our Beadshop homepage here. And if we go here, we'll scroll and we'll go to Confetti. We'll click there. And you can see here, we've got Emily's tubular bead crochet page that it goes to. And let's just go to this Confetti one. You can see everything that Emily's used here, and you can get a nice close-up of that. And I think, let's see, under more info, I think we need to attach the handout. So let me go back. Let's go to, Out of Africa was really your first one that you did here. And we've got these great episode notes that we wrote up. Let me go to this one that we wrote up, and Emily talks about all the different things here. And then let me show you, we'll go back to this. Let me go back to the Stinson Beach, which is the one that you did really recently. You can see this one too. You can see a really nice project map from that. But all of these really great projects, all 3 of these videos kind of build up on each other. And then, of course, our bits and pieces and Pieces project. That's also really great.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of fun just to even straight crochet. It just is it's another skill that we add in to the looks of things that we do. You know, I just stacked up a whole bunch of bracelets on here because I love me some bead crochet, right?
Yeah, I love it. Now Terry is saying Terry crochets like some weirdo using two hands and passing the needle back and forth. Now, same thing, Terry. I had been crocheting like a knitter. I learned how to crochet from my gran. So I was holding my crochet hook. Let me show you because I want to.
Well, I know how you're holding it. You were holding it like this, like
correct.
A pen.
Yeah. So I've been working on some granny squares here. Let me do this. I'll show you because
Granny square.
I need something else to do. But I was doing my crochet. Now I need to remember how I was doing it. So I was doing it like a knitter. So I was tensioning my thread in my right hand in the same one that I was doing, right? So I was throwing it like this. Yeah. Well, finally, I have figured out my tension to be able to crochet like most crocheters crochet, where you tension your thread or your cord, or like Emily does her beads in my case, my left hand, and crocheting in my right. And it's really actually made me a faster crocheter, which I'm very, very pleased about. So there are a ton of videos online that talk about your crochet techniques and stuff like that. So play around with it because it also really makes a difference in your tension. Now, Emily, go ahead.
I see that Karen is asking about Nymo thread to bead crochet. You could, I don't know if you can step down another sizing hook. I don't know if you could definitely do it. I don't know if you should. It's so thin and it's split. So Nymo is one of those filament threads, right? It's a bunch of threads kind of laying together, no twist. And it'd be easy to split the thread. And that's sort of sad when you do that in crochet. Just like in knitting, if you split the thread, you would like to go back and sort that before you move on too far, you know?
Emily, I want to show your wrist here real quick. And then, whoops, sorry. Let me,
I could actually almost make two wrists.
Here we go. There we are.
Here too.
So really gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I love, love, love. And those slide on really beautifully. Now, Spunky is asking here, is there a version with a clasp rather than a bangle? And you've shown it in tubular crochet before. I think instead of crocheting it with beads all the way to the end and crocheting them together, you crochet like a little end at the front and the back and then glue it into a clasp. Is that correct?
You know, if I was going to crochet and use a clasp, I would treat it the way I would treat kumihimo with a clasp, is I would use a cone. And cones are lovely. And we don't really talk about them as much as we used to in the old days. But cones are a way of gathering up a bunch of strands and kind of smoothing that transition from thread to metal. So inside this cone is a bit of wire that I made into a loop, and I caught about half the strands in that loop, wrapped it closed, and then fed the loop through the cone and did another wrapped loop on the other end, attaching my clasp. So that pulls all of the mechanics kind of up inside the cone.
Right.
And it's not glued shut. It's not glued in there. It's loose, but it's held in there with tension wire. And cones are really great. What they do, however, is they add a lot of length. So you won't have to crochet as much, but you don't also have as many beads. So it's sort of a
Mhm.
trade.
One of the things that I have here, I'm going to show you that Michelle did with her Kumihimo.
Yes, please.
You could kind of do this same thing. She used one of these little, and you can watch, I recommend watching Michelle's Kumi videos. They're super informative. She talks about using a clasp on the end of her Kumi. You could do the same thing with bead crochet and just have the crochet without beads. In this case, it's Kumihimo without beads. Measure it and then glue it into either one of these little clasp closures, or what I did here. Let me reveal my grand reveal here.
Oh, cool.
Is this, let me see if I can zoom in just a tad. So I wanted the look, Emily, of your bracelet without crocheting, to be honest.
Right.
I'm like, I want to wear all these beads because I think that this mix is so gorge.
Yep.
So what I did was I got our 4mm leather, and I took the 4mm. You can do this with 4mm or 5. I also have some of the 5mm if you want a bangle that's even thicker. This is our 5mm braided. And I glued the clasp on the end, these barrel clasps, which I just love, the smooth barrel. And when you started talking, before while I was trying to work this out in my head, because of course I'm working it out in my head right as we're doing it, I'm like, I'm going to use the flippin' bead spinner because we have one. So I started to string with these on the bead spinner. As you know, I strung 100 inches. Well, I just started. I glued this clasp on. I wrapped. I wasn't sure what wire I was going to use. First, I was like, you know what? I'm going to use 26 gauge. And I'm like, no, I want to use something that's super flexible. So I went to this 34 gauge black wire that we make the needles out of. And what I did was I strung everything. Then I wrapped super tight around here. I added a dot of glue, and then I just started wrapping over it. So now I've wrapped, and I have about an inch left of wrapping. So let me show you.
That looks so good, Kate. I love it.
Right? So this is 6 inches.
Yep.
Right here. And I took it out of a leaf that I take a lot of ideas from, our brother and sister beaders from the beautiful continent of Africa. This is an African technique that's been used for forever. It's just simply stringing beads on some kind of fiber and wrapping it around a core. So essentially, that's what I've done. I've wrapped, so you can see I've come here, I've come around, and let me see if I can kind of undo this. I measured, I need to wrap about another inch here. Okay. So I'm just wrapping, kind of shoving these beads down, just taking a little bit of that. Because Emily, I'm in love with this confetti mix, what you've done here.
You know?
And I wanted to wear it like today, right? So I get that way. I'm like, I don't know if you get.
I'm right there with you with immediate gratification. It's imperative.
Super hyper focused.
Yeah.
So while I'm finishing this, Terry
I see questions here, actually.
Or Carolyn, yeah. So this one is the center hole of the bracelet that you crocheted, is that large enough to put memory wire through?
It is. I would make
and
sure.
Let me know if you want me to switch my camera.
No, that's okay. You go ahead, do your thing. You could definitely do memory wire through there. I would make sure that the end of the memory wire that you're pushing through is as blunt-ended as possible, which means you might even want to give it a little file because you don't want it to snag on the thread on the inside.
Right.
But I would definitely do that memory wire in the center. There was also a question. Let me roll back a little bit here.
Sure, and I can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, no, I'm looking on my iPad, so I've got it. Hillary was asking about the starter base off at the end.
Oh,
You're talking about the little stump?
yes.
Cut it off. I know it sounds kind of scary, but you can cut through crochet and it will kind of weep a few loose beads at a moment for a moment. And then pretty soon you'll have an end. And you can either just put a dab of glue on there or pull the end through the loop as you would normally to end crochet. And you'll be good. You'll be golden, right? Able to go move on.
Right.
From there. And the last one, so Terry Bass, we're still talking about Nymo and crocheting with Nymo and another fiber to stabilize it. So if Nymo's through the middle of the bead and there's another fiber also through the middle of the bead, or is it on the outside of the bead? I guess I'm I need a little more clarity for you.
Maybe, Emily, it's like a ride along. Maybe you're crocheting with Nymo and maybe like a micro seal-on together. That's what I would be guessing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Nymo is so fine that it might give you fits with splitting.
Yeah.
If you're wanting to use smaller beads, I would stick with the micro seal-on. That is very fine. There is a little bit of a balancing act with bead crochet and the hole size that you have in the bead. So I would use micro seal-on for Delicas, size 11s, size 8s. I might move up to when I get to size 8, I might move up to the, what do we call the other size seal-on? Micro.
Oh, the micro, the fine.
Move up to the fine. And then with size 6, I might move up again to the regular seal-on. Or pearl cotton or one of the other bigger ones. If you have a really thin thread in a bead with a big hole, that bead kind of wobbles around on that thread. So both with the finished look and with the actual doing of it with bead crochet, I think you're setting yourself up for making it harder on yourself using a very, very fine thread.
Terry has a follow-up question on that. With tubular crochet, what size beads do you recommend starting with?
I actually think starting with an 8 and fine seal-on is really a great place to play. I think those two things are a good match, and I think neither one of them will make you work harder than you should to start off. How's that?
That's good to know.
Okay.
I am looking
right along. So, okay, Terry, so you're crocheting around the bead is on a Nymo, but you're crocheting around a seal-on or something bigger.
No, she's talking about holding the two together.
Yeah. Well, okay.
Yeah. I am looking.
I'm not so sure about that. I'd have to try it out.
Yeah.
And I'm not so sure about why, but you can crochet. You can use beads in regular crochet and regular knitting. And there's a couple of ways you can do it. You can pre-string the beads on, and then, believe it or not, you can actually crochet by putting the crochet hook through the center of a bead and pulling up a loop of thread through the bead, or a loop of fiber through the bead. Let me see. I usually have a little bin here on my work table.
Let me know when and if you want me to switch. What I'm doing here, so everybody just knows, is I'm going to clip this away. I couldn't find my toothpicks to measure, so I kind of measured to see this length. I know that that's what's going to go in my clasp there, and then I'm just going to wrap, add a little bit of glue, and glue this inside. That's all she wrote.
Sure. Switch back for just a sec, Kate.
Sure. Let me get to a place. I'm going to put this tool down. Okay. I'm going to come back to you. And now, Emily, back to you.
Back to me. So you can bead crochet also. Let's just say you're making a garment, right? And you want to add beads as you're going along. You can add beads to your crochet by sticking your bead, your hook through the bead and pulling a loop of thread through the bead again.
You're a little out of frame, Em.
All right. So you can actually crochet this way as well. Right? This means you don't have to pre-string the beads on. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so tell me that one more time. Tell me what you're doing.
Hold on one second. Oh, I got to split. There we go. Let me
so this is kind of how you add beads, and I think you just said it, when you're crocheting onto a garment, right?
Right. So you get the bead on your hook and you crochet a loop of thread. Oops. You crochet the thread actually through the bead. So I'd have to be using a size 6 or larger. I must have a really small hook here. Hold on, let me get a bigger hook.
Right, I see that, because you're actually hooking the bead around a loop of the thread rather than the thread running through the center of the bead.
That's what happens when you have the wrong size hook.
Right.
I couldn't grasp the thread and pull it back through because it kept falling off the hook. My hook was too small. Right? So you can crochet by picking up the bead and crocheting through the hook, through the hole of the bead, without. These just happen to be what I had in my hand here. So that's another way of getting the bead on the thread and incorporate it into your work.
Right.
Right.
Cool.
Looks different, adds it in a different way. It's all good, you know.
I like that.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Hopefully I haven't screwed this up too much. Okay. So what I've got here, do you mind if I put this back here?
Go ahead. Go for it. Yeah, I want to see your bracelet.
I think that was
such a good thing to do.
So here, what I've done is I've gotten a little bit of extra glue there. I haven't been as
I love those bullet clasps. They're so
I do too. These smooth barrels are so gorgeous. I got a little bit of extra glue there, but you're going to ignore it. What I did was I went ahead and glued my end in here. Okay. Then now I'm going to just put a few here. And then Janice, I will.
Nice to see you, JP.
I'll talk about that before we close. I'm going to cut away my extra wire here. There we go. And now I'm just going to come in. I'm going to push my coil, because that's really what this is, coil of beads down so it's nice and tight so it doesn't move around too much. I'm going to wrap here. Whoops, I was out of alignment with my wrap. There we go. Now what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add a little bit of zap. I don't like to glue beads really, but I think this is the best way to end it. I'm going to add a little dot of zap there. Okay. I'm going to pull this tight. I'm going to push this down. Push this down. So it's pretty tight here. I'm going to take away the remaining beads that I don't need. And just like I started it, I'm going to get that skinny 34 gauge wire around a few times. See that? Now, just like thread, almost like we do with seed beads, Emily.
Yeah. I would have used 24 gauge for this.
Yeah.
You would have been fine. It would have had a little bit more body, but I still think you would be fine.
Yeah, I don't know why. I really wanted thread for some reason. And I felt like, no 24 gauge. I'm going to put you aside I also didn't really want to see much of the wire in there.
Yeah,
So
having that dark thread against, or the dark wire against the dark leather is good call.
yeah, really works out for me. So I'm just going to come in and I'm just going to wrap this. You can hardly see it. I'm going to bring it here. I'm going to add one more tiny dot of glue there where that wire ends. I'm going to close it up, and later I'm just going to clip that wire away. So what I've got here, I mean, it's not as intricate as your really fantastic crocheted piece,
I
but
love it.
I'm pretty stoked about this.
I no, I have always admired the African beading because often they're working with the same beads that we're working with, the same hole sizes and stuff, but they don't have the advantage of all the technology and all of the variety of findings and pieces that we have. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's yeah, it's it's something to remember for sure.
So these bead mixes, I'm going to zoom in. These bead mixes that we
Yeah,
just got
we've seen
in
those. Yeah.
from the Delicas, these are, and it's the DB, it's the 989. And I know these have names, and I'm sorry I don't have them to hand, but you can find them all in the Just In. This is the 992. This one's the 990, and this is the 991. And you can, with all of these new ones, you can make your own mixes, just like Emily showed us. But any of these, even a two color with this ivory and this moss, this would be also tea terrific with the two tones of the gray and the moss. So I don't know, experiment, get that bead spinner. And so last but not least, Emily, I do want to put those needles up. We have the packaged needle. So the bead spinner comes with the shorter
Right.
fixed eye needle. That's what I used.
Mm-hmm.
We also have this longer needle. Let me zoom out. Sorry. And that was the one, Emily, like you showed, it has the small eye. I would go ahead and use that harness trick with this. I was going to use these, but my 32 gauge wire didn't quite fit in there without me trying to shove them in, right?
You could have used the harness on
I
the
could have used the harness, but I started doing it before you showed it. So I'm going to try it with this because I feel like I'd like the length of this long one. And then here's the big eye, especially if you're spinning onto elastic. See, here's the actual big eye needle
yeah.
that's right here.
It's very handy if you're going onto bigger elastic and it's not fitting the eye. You know, you have the smaller bead. Try the harness method. Just move the elastic down a little bit, and you should be able to go for it.
Mm-hmm. So all of these have their own unique uses. I use this big eye for a short, but they all work fine. They all work great. Just using the needles that came with the spinner was great. Though, as you say, Emily, the needles are consumables. You will need some fresh needles. So I'm pretty excited about this. I'm going to come in now and clip this little extra wire away because I feel like my I use zap glue for this. So take a look, everybody. I mean, come on. I'll put this on. I love it too. I'm glad you do, Em. I didn't want to step on your crochet toes.
Not at all. Not at all. Well, and that was the other reason that I did the little laddered bracelet. You know, I did this very simple.
Yeah, let me put yours up too so we can kind of, let me remove this. Let me get this out of the way. And then Terry, I see your question, so I am going to answer it about the inventory labels.
You know, just using the 0.5 leather, and I used Fireline. You know, we could have a whole day, Kate, talking about fibers and the different threads and things that we use and why we use them and how we've evolved.
Yeah,
NYMO.
same.
I throw around NYMO as a term all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
spools of beading thread like this used to be the norm. This used to be what everybody worked with for almost all the seed beading stuff all the time. And there have been so many changes. I really have found that um, Fireline for me is kind of a go-to for most of my beadwork. Maybe on a larger loomed piece, I'm going to be happier with a traditional KO or a NYMO kind of thread. But Fireline for me just is so much more durable. And, this was using that same mix, picking it up randomly, scooping it with my needle through the pile, and then
Mm-hmm.
simply doing a ladder with 4 beads across gives me kind of the same effect.
Mm-hmm.
And super quick, super easy. I, literally threaded the button on the leather. And, this was a brief hour or two of work to get to that point. It would make a lovely little gift.
Yeah, I think they really, really look great as a pair there for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
Love. And you can see I've got some
Ooh, look at that
wrist
stack.
nest going on here. This is very similar. So this winding technique is the same technique I used on the boho bangle, just smaller beads, smaller wire. It also pairs really beautifully with Michelle's Kumihimo. This also looks really beautiful with Danielle Wicks's piece with the super duos. So you can definitely make a great wrist mess with it. Another quick question. Terry had a question about our stickers. So our old inventory stickers, and Emily, you have a couple there on your, yeah. So since we have moved from our fulfillment center back here to our bead shop studio, I do apologize that those stickers, those were not an us thing. They were a fulfillment center thing. So what you do have though now is a greatly expanded and clearer to read inventory or receipt that comes with your things.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a trade-off. So you've got this great sheet of paper with your inventory stuff. You can always cut I know it seems so kind of old fashioned, but you could cut those strips, cut your invoice up, and put your little invoice piece in with your product. I'm looking at different ways to what do I want to say, to mark our bags, but we've kind of had to go backwards with that rather than forward. So, but yeah, the order manifest is much clearer, so we had to have a little bit of a trade-off there. So I appreciate your understanding with that.
I actually liked the old sticker, but I would often write the name on it in any case, just with Sharpie, right on the label. And
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate that it's maybe less bags,
Mm-hmm.
less sticker, less stuff to get rid of later. So
Right. Sorry, I'm trying to remove. Sorry, there we go. Trying to remove that and remove that there. There we go.
Terry, you're hilarious.
Yes, I could. We could put candy, and then it would be all be
Well,
good.
of course,
It
it's
is
no
true.
longer melting season, so we don't have to worry.
No, it's true. Well, Emily, thank you so much.
Absolutely. I'm going to see you next week, right?
Yeah, you're back on next week.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah.
see you in 7 days.
Yeah, 7. I know. I can't. I'm like, I don't know what day it is. I
Need my
don't.
mouth
Who
to
are
get
you?
going.
Who are you? But here's our.
Oh,
I
so
just.
nice.
It's really, really fun. Thanks for this really fantastic project. Really great. More insights into our foray into bead crochet. I'll see you next Wednesday. So Friday, my friends, I have something cooking up on this. It's sitting right on that table that I'm going to unfurl on Friday. So we'll have some fun then. Emily, you and I will have some more fun next week.
Absolutely.
Great. So folks, do know we do carry those bead spinners. we have a limited amount of these confetti mixes, and when they're gone, they're gone. So, as always, let me put up this banner. So I'm going to cover you up for just a second here, Em. You can find everything that we use today in our broadcast that Emily shared with us right over on beadshop.com. If you have any questions, anything that you need to know, hit us up over at info@beadshop.com. We're just on the other side of the computer there. Hit that like, subscribe, and notification button over on that YouTube. You can find us all over social at beadshop.com. And as always, my friends, we really, really appreciate your support of our small business. Right now, more than ever, it's important to show the love by shopping those small businesses that you love, because literally without you folks out there pushing that order button, we would not be able to be here and do what we love. We're not millionaires. So we thank you for shopping with us and showing us your love by keeping those orders flowing through. Our orders, we're catching up more and more. We're working real hard here. Again, if you need something and you've ordered it and you're like, oh my God, I need this super fast, email Drea. We'll expedite that order out. But we're doing our very, very best to get everything out and sent to you. And so many of you have been so understanding and have been sending us such nice emails. We really, really appreciate that support. And Emily, we really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much for such a great show today.
It was way fun. I will come and talk about crochet anytime. Anytime you want. I will talk with you about crochet.
You will be here.
It's one of my favorite things. And I really appreciate Janice bearing with me on putting this mix together. I know it was a little challenging, and we had some terse emails over this messaging back and forth. But I do think it's a real winner, and I think it's a very pretty mix, and you'll get to use this on some project that you just adore. So I appreciate it.
Well, people are super excited about this. And again, a big happy birthday to our Drea.
Oh, happy birthday, Drea.
And Em, I will see you next week.
Excellent. We will see you next Wednesday because we got more fun coming.
More fun coming. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Love y'all.
Talk
See
to
ya.
you soon. Bye.
Bye.